Thank you all for coming. And again, a reminder, I hope your cell phones are silenced as we begin another session with my friend, the Foreign Minister of the Sultanate of Oman, Sayyid Badr Albusaidi. Thank you. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
The pleasure is all mine. And thank you really for the kind invitation.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be here.
We've had a really interesting morning so far, really impactful speeches. You know, His Majesty King Abdullah was our keynote speaker. We had His Excellency Anwar Gargash as well, talked about the situation in the Gulf and internationally. We also had the Foreign Minister of Tunisia and a number of distinguished former American diplomats. So it's been a great discussion, and it continues with you. Welcome again. And you mentioned you wanted to say a few words to start, please.
I just really prepared a few notes, but I guess most of them will be a reflection of the theme that you have designed for this session. So I just wanted to say that we are living in a transition of positivity in our region. Our economies are diversifying. We are transitioning into renewables, harnessing the energy the sun provides us and some wind. And so there is a positive trend. And as you can see, all the rating agencies are giving us positive outlooks in the GCC I'm talking about. But that is a good picture, and we hope to build on it, sustain that development. But then, like everything else in the world, I mean, there will always be challenges. And if I may, I mean, the key challenge for a sustainable peace and security in the region of the Middle East will remain to be the unresolved question of Palestine. We think that this is important to be mindful of the need to resolve that issue, because that will mean a lot in changing the landscape for a more positive, sustainable future for us all. That's really my point here. Otherwise, I think GCC relationship continues to grow. The relationship with the bigger neighbors, such as Iran, is in a better position now than ever before. And the same with Iraq, as Iraq sort of develops and negotiates its domestic difficulties and challenges, we see areas for hope. We must keep the flame of hope opening and try our best to really bridge again on the positive sides and concentrate on building the positive elements of the relationships, inter-Gulf relationships, and again with Yemen, with Iraq and Iran.
Your Excellency, you laid out a number of the key points and issues in the region that we want to get into this discussion today. And let's start with Iran. Both President Biden and President Raisi have thanked Oman, as well as Qatar, for their role in the recent prisoner exchange. And thank you for that on behalf of those of us who know some of the Americans who were released. It was overdue. Oman has been pivotal in all such releases that have taken place, and in supporting and facilitating direct and indirect talks between the United States and Iran on a range of issues. My hunch is Oman's role in this will continue and even expand. What can you tell us about Oman's role leading to the recent exchange, and what comes next with Iran in the region? You mentioned it's a key issue. How do you advise and how do you see the situation?
I don't think anybody will disagree with the fact that a good, harmonious relationship in this region is good for all. It's good for security, it's good for our friends, and it's good indeed for our people. And this is really the key objectives and agenda that Oman advocates for, is to always try and maintain a good neighborly relationship between everybody. We've established a relationship based on mutual respect and trust with Iran for so many years. And I think that gave us the capacity to be able to work and operate in the manner you've just described. Likewise, we've maintained an extremely good relationship with the United States. And also that relationship is founded on mutual trust and respect and credibility. We try to use these assets in favor of peace and security and stability for us all. To maintain the freedom of navigation, to maintain the freedom of doing business. And I think we can already see a lot of positive movements and progress in that field. And we will continue to do that. I mean, it is still far, we cannot say that, there is a deal going to be struck between the United States and Iran, but certainly I think it's in everybody's interest to see a rapprochement developing slowly, and that will need a series of further steps of confidence building in order to really bring, hopefully, a major breakthrough in the JCPOA. I think we need to see that back on track as soon as possible. And I think this is a common objective for everybody, but we are not there yet.
What would those confidence-building steps be? And again, you know Iran, and you've negotiated with them in such a sensitive way. You negotiate as a facilitator, an intermediary, where there's no trust between the United States and Iran. You have trust with both parties. What do you think needs to happen next? We just had an exchange of prisoners, and we just had the transfer of money to a bank in Qatar so the money could be distributed for humanitarian purposes. Is there something we can learn from this exchange for the next one or the next step in the relationship?
The recent exchange is indeed one of these steps that we have always argued in favor of to take place, because it does help in building some trust, and it also sends the right signals to in both directions, that both countries are serious. They want to do business. They want to reach an understanding on a broad areas, broad things, broad issues to deal with Iran, the United States, and the region. So I think we will hope to see more such steps taking place in the months to come. We will continue engagement. Very key, important also here in maintaining a momentum of building trust is to try and de-escalate, maintain a level of de-escalation where neither side takes any steps that may sort of see a reversal of this trend. We want to maintain a positive trend, even if it is slow, painstaking, it's challenging, but I think we need, and everybody needs, to support that. At the end of the day, it's good for business, it's good for global economy, global security.
Is the JCPOA dead, and how do you see the nuclear understandings at this point that are there, we're calling something less than an agreement?
We are still hopeful that the JCPOA will be back. I would like to see it back because I think it's the best thing we have. We don't have another alternative on this front. So it's still too early to tell. But again, I think all these series of steps that have taken place are certainly sending the right signals in both directions, that both parties are very much serious and interested in tackling the JCPOA and reaching an agreement. As you know, most of it has been already negotiated, and there are just maybe a few areas that remain to be problematic. It's quite technical in many ways, and I'm not an expert to comment on that. But hearing from the experts, I think it is doable. If it could be done back then, in 2015, why not now? If there is certainly the political will, and if we maintain a good, strong political will, the JCPOA will be back.
And one last question on Iran. With regard to Iran's role in regional affairs, some of our discussions earlier today expressed continued concern about Iran's role in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. There's also a countervailing trend where other countries in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia most notably, have worked to build new diplomatic progress with Iran, the rapprochement underway, opening of embassies. How do you look at both trends, Iran's continued concerning behavior, but also a diplomatic trend? And I know Oman's an exception because you've always had a good working relationship with Iran.
This is why I think, and I believe, in the power of dialogue. It is through that dialogue we can address every concern there is. And this is why we have always argued in favor of having a platform where Iran, its neighbors, can talk bilaterally or collectively, because I'm sure just as you may have some issues that you want to discuss with Iran, also there should be a room for the Iranians to express their concerns. We have common concerns in both tracks, and I will stress that we should understand and recognize and acknowledge that all of us are part of this region, including Iran, and all of us therefore have a legitimate interest in the future of this region. And if we really have that interest intact, we need to foster a credible, frank dialogue between all of us.
Let's turn to Yemen. A couple of years ago, I think it's been 2 years, and then Al Monitor podcast, we discussed Yemen. The headline from that interview is, you say the Houthis have to be part of the solution in Yemen. Here we are 2 years later, Houthi delegation going to Saudi Arabia, and that's been hailed as a very positive step. How do you see the progress towards a peace in Yemen, which is so vital for the Arabian Peninsula, and what do you think happens next and needs to happen next?
Yes, I think as far as the Yemeni crisis or issues are concerned, it's got to be a Yemeni-led process. And we've got to help and support and facilitate a Yemeni dialogue that will see a better future for that country. So far, that dialogue is still not in our hands. It's not in reach. But I think this step of having the Houthis fly to Saudi Arabia as a key neighbor to Yemen is a very important one. I don't want to build too many expectations out of this visit, but the fact that it has taken place, it took a long time to materialize, that's a step in the right direction. And another fact that is encouraging is that although we don't have a formal ceasefire, but predominantly really the situation in Yemen has been somewhat calm for some time. That sort of informal truce has been sustained until this visit took place, and I hope this will continue. We can build on it. But certainly, I think we need to approach the Yemeni issue in an inclusive way, where everybody has a stake, everybody has to eventually come around the table and draft the way forward, a roadmap for Yemen, so Yemen can be at peace with itself and at peace with its neighbors.
Clearly, getting to this point in the Yemen process, there have been key intermediaries and supporters of diplomacy. Oman, of course, has been a key one. There's the United States through Special Envoy Tim Lenderking. The UN mediation has all been instrumental. Is Iran playing a helpful role in this process as you see it?
I think it is. I don't see a reason why not, because it is also in its interest to see this problem resolved. I don't see it another way at all. I think it is helpful. I actually met with the Iranian, and we meet quite frequently. I just met the foreign minister last night, and felt that the leadership in Iran is very much on board with the direction of travel vis-a-vis Yemen.
Let me turn, if I could, to situation in Oman, and something we've covered at Al Monitor closely, and I think it's a story we've told, but I think needs to be told even more, which is Oman's economic turnaround in the last few years. If you go back pre-COVID, you notice several years of negative growth. And there was real concern going into the COVID crisis in particular that Oman was on the brink of very, very grave economic situation. But you came out of COVID with several years of positive growth. There's been substantial change in the economy. It seems to be moving in a strong direction. I know there are challenges, but tell us how you see both the opportunities ahead in terms of the economy, what the risks are, and how did you manage that turnaround?
Well, to start with, obviously, the sustainability of a relatively reasonable oil price has helped to generate enough revenue to be able to really counter the debt issue that we've had as a result of the collapse of the oil prices, but also COVID. That sort of ruined the economy really in many, many ways, just like it happens everywhere else on the globe. But now we are in a positive trajectory. We have a vision, which we call 2040. And we have also launched our new strategy for decarbonization to reach a neutral carbon by 2050. And Sultan Haytham is really on top of things. I mean, he's hands-on, making sure that everyone in his government really is focused to achieve the goal of diversification of the economy, to achieve the goal of generating more investments, private sector as well as public sector investments in the various sectors of diversification, such as tourism, development of our blue economy. We have a long coastline and really very rich. It's highly untapped yet. We have quite a resourceful in terms of minerals in Oman. So that is another important sector. And of course, nowadays, the development of the green industry and all that the downstream that sort of is involved in the green industry, like green steel, and so we are open for our partners in the United States and elsewhere to really get grasp with this potential of growth in Oman. Let us remind ourselves that we are situated in a region or in a geographical position which is very much accessible to other bigger markets in India, in Iran, East Africa, and of course the Gulf and the Arab world. We are talking about a market radius of more than 2 billion people around us. And Oman, thanks to its relatively modern infrastructure, good network of ports right on the Indian Ocean, political stability and so forth, is really suitable to be a major hub and gateway to tap into all these markets. We have a young population, quite able, very competitive, and really hungry for more work and more opportunities to join hands with investors everywhere. Innovation is key. Transformation of our digital economy is important. And so the opportunities are really endless. And I hope some of you who have not been to Oman will be able to visit and see for your own eyes.
Agreed. Our time is running out. I wanted to ask you one final question, because you began with this, and I want to end with this. You mentioned Palestine as the central issue. Obviously, that was a key part of the conversation this morning with His Majesty King Abdullah. How do you see progress or the lack of progress on that front? And has the Abraham Accords advanced the issue in your mind? You were not a party to it. And now there's talk of Israel-Saudi pursuing a full peace with the support of the United States. What's your take on what needs to happen next, and do you support the Israel-Saudi normalization process?
We support peace, and this has always been the position of Oman for so many years. I mean, since the early days of the Camp David in the 1970s until today. And we have actually even pioneered quite a number of steps in reaching out with Israel to encourage them that peace has dividends, and you will be able to really fully integrate with the rest of the region if we are able to deliver a dignified peace deal with the Palestinians. Everyone, I'm sure, has said, I'm glad the king has come here and talked about this issue. But there is no other way, the way we see it, other than the concept of a two-state solution to resolve this issue. It is good for Israel, it's good for Palestine, it's good for all of us, it's good for the world. We need to look to the future and not to be prisoners of our past. This is how we look at it. It is not about a question of only focusing on normalization with Israel. It's really about the big strategic picture, and we need to approach it conclusively. And we cannot take pieces of it because that is not helpful. We need to look at it in an inclusive and conclusive way.
Excellency, Foreign Minister Albusaidi, thank you for joining us today. Very much appreciate your contribution.